Francis, you just mentioned that the mind is deconstructed in the timeless and then it's reconstructed. Could you talk a little bit more about the reconstruction?
Because when the mind is not perceived, it doesn't exist. You see? Just as the gender of the photon, when it is not perceived, it doesn't exist. It's neither female nor male. So there is very little you can say about it. It is in a potential state. So between two moments, between two perceptions, to be more precise, between two perceptions, there is no mind. The mind gets recreated with each perception, in fact. Between two perceptions, the mind is in a potential state. Because think what the mind is. The mind is two things. It is perception plus the consciousness that perceives it. Right? Now, when we use the terms between two perceptions, what we mean is in the absence of perception. Therefore, in the absence of perception, the only thing that is left is the consciousness part of it, right? So, because the mind is perception, the mind doesn't exist as such. Only the consciousness element exists. So, when we go back to the mind, for the mind, the tendency is to look at perceptions as real and consciousness as not real. Therefore, the mind sees the meat, of the sandwich. Where is the beef? You remember? You're old enough. Okay, the old lady. Where's the beef? Now, for ignorance, the beef, and we are vegetarian, don't misunderstand me, but for ignorance, the beef is in the perception, and the consciousness is the bread. But for the truth knower, it's just the opposite. The reality, the meat, the beef, is in the silence. That's where the presence is. That's where the reality is. And in the light of these realities, the perceptions are less important. They borrow their reality from the consciousness that creates them. But they don't have a reality of their own. You see? So in that sense, they are kind of illusion unless they are seen as reality itself. In which case, it is valid to consider that perceptions are real.
For a mind, though, that has been used to living in illusion and then begins getting glimpses of truth, at a certain point, that mind, could you say, is deconstructed?
Yeah, the mind doesn't get glimpses of truth. You see, the mind cannot have a glimpse of truth. The mind can be transformed by a glimpse of truth. But it is only truth that has a glimpse of itself. And this glimpse of itself has an impact on the mind. So what happens in a truth seeker is that in ignorance, the attention is completely captive of the objects, of the perceptions. In the truth seeker's case, there is already, after a first glimpse of truth, a part of the attention, of the love, that flows towards the source, towards this state between, the interval between perceptions, if you will, towards Turiya, towards the fourth state. And the more the attention flows back, and the love, to that place, the more glimpses we have, if you will, the greater the love, the greater the interest for that, and there is an apparent disinterest that takes place for the perceptions. You see, as a result of that. So there is a transitional period in which the world is less interesting. We find ourselves much less motivated. Because a lot of our love and interest goes towards that state. The four states, the interval between the thoughts. But then we are led in the teachings to the understanding that this presence is always available even in the presence of perceptions. You see, we can be at peace in the presence of perception. We can be perfectly satisfied, perfectly happy.
That's what I mean in the sense that the mind really isn't reconstructed after.
After a glimpse, the mind is transformed always. These are the moments when a perception vanishes and no two perceptions are the same. Someone says we never swim in the same river twice. The universe is never the same from second to second. So two perceptions are never the same. They seem to be the same. It's never the same. It's always new, always new, always new. So in fact, the mind gets renewed every time it is called back to this stillness that creates all these perceptions. And then, you know what the mind is? It's just one perception at a time. That's what the mind is. It's not a full bunch of perception. The mind is just that perception at that very moment. So what the mind is truly one perception only.
Talking about is more the mind doesn't get reattached to objects once.
Yet, it is not the mind that doesn't get reattached to objects. It is consciousness that doesn't get attached to the perceptions. Because consciousness has seen itself in its freedom, in its eternity, in its timelessness, in its glory, in its perfection, in its splendor, in its love, in its peace, in its happiness. And having seen itself in that condition, everything else becomes petty or just simply one way to celebrate this presence, among other ways. So every new perception then is a celebration.